Sorting and filtering clean up data that's already messy. Data validation stops the mess from happening in the first place by controlling exactly what someone is allowed to type into a cell before it ever lands in the sheet. In this lesson we'll add dropdowns, number rules, and even an advanced formula rule to our sales table, so bad entries get caught the moment they're typed, not discovered 3 weeks later when a report quietly comes out wrong. Let's add 2 new columns to work with, category and status, plus a small reference list of approved status values that other rules can point back to. Let's start with the category column. Select I2 through I26, open data, then data validation. In the panel that opens, click Add Rule. A new rule starts with drop-down selected and 2 option fields ready. Replace them with electronics and clothing, then add home goods and sports. Click Done, and every cell in that range now shows a small drop-down arrow, so instead of typing a category by hand and risking a typo, or ending up with 3 different spellings of the same category scattered across the sheet, you just click and pick one from the list. Typing a list by hand works fine for 4 items, but what if your approved list already lives somewhere in the sheet, like the status options we just added in column K? Select J2 through J26, the actual status entry column, open data, then data validation, then add rule. This time set the criteria to drop down from a range, and select K1 through K4 as the source. Click Done. The dropdown now pulls directly from those source cells, so editing an approved status updates the rule without retyping every option. If the source list grows, extend the referenced range to include the new cells. Dropdowns work great for text, but what about numbers, like our revenue column? Select C2 through C26, open data, then data validation, then add rule. Set the criteria to greater than and type 0, since revenue should never be negative in a sales report. Click Done. Now if someone accidentally types a negative number into that column, or fat fingers an extra minus sign, Sheets catches it immediately instead of letting a broken figure quietly flow into every chart and total built on top of it. Now for something more advanced, preventing duplicate entries entirely. Select A2 through A26, the item column, open data, then data validation, then add rule. Set the criteria to custom formula is, and type a formula using COUNTIF. It counts how many times the current cell's value appears in the whole range, and only allows the entry if that count is exactly 1. Click Done. To test it reliably, enter duplicate demo once in A2 as a unique value, then enter the same name again in A3. The second entry is rejected because that name already exists elsewhere in the column, something a simple drop-down or a manual glance down the list could never reliably catch on its own. Every validation rule has one more setting worth knowing: what happens when the rule is broken. Reject the input blocks the entry outright and pops an error, exactly what we just saw with our duplicate check. Open the rule on the revenue column again, and switch that setting to show a warning instead. Click Done. Now typing a negative number is still allowed, but the cell gets a small red triangle in the corner, flagging it as suspicious without stopping you from entering it, which is useful when you want a record kept for audit purposes, but still want it clearly marked as unusual for someone to review later. Let's recap: data, then data validation, then add rule is where every rule starts. Dropdown builds a list from items you type in by hand. Dropdown from a range pulls that same list from cells elsewhere in the sheet, so it updates automatically as your approved options change. Number, then a condition like greater than, keeps numeric columns within sane limits. Custom formula opens the door to advanced logic, like blocking duplicates with COUNTIF. And reject the input versus show a warning decides whether a broken rule stops the entry cold or just flags it for later review. In the next lesson, we start writing real formulas, the 10 functions everyone should know in Google Sheets.